Good evening, everyone. My presentation today will be on the role of hydrogen peroxide in plant germination. My name is Ashlyn Scearce, and I am a senior at Tunstall High School. I will be attending the University of Lynchburg in the fall to major in biology in the hope of becoming a physical therapist. I chose this project because I am going to major in biology in college. Increasing the amount of plants is overall beneficial to the environment because plants are the critical producers in the food chain. The more plants there are, the more food there will be available for organisms searching for food. Plants are essential to animals and humans because they provide us with food, shelter, and medicine. Plants are also sturdy enough to protect the soil from erosion, which eventually would lead into pollution in nearby water sources. With a new technique for plant growth, farmers will be able to use the information they receive from this study to improve their plants, whether it is for sale purposes or for their animals on their farm. During my literature review, I was able to narrow it down into two main topics. In order to continue with my research, I had to discover background information on this chemical. Hydrogen peroxide serves many different purposes. 3% hydrogen peroxide was initially used to help treat wounds by cleaning the infected area and getting rid of any germs. It has also been used in the past to disinfect surfaces that may have bacteria or viruses present. Hydrogen peroxide was a helpful chemical during the COVID-19 pandemic when certain cleaning products were not available. The extra oxygen molecule gives the chemical its ability to be such a strong agent. Its oxidizing abilities are too powerful and cause the infected site to become more irritated and may even take longer to heal. Since hydrogen peroxide is so powerful, researchers have theorized using it in plants during their germination process to kill any pathogens that may stunt the plant's growth. Hydrogen peroxide can help plants absorb more nutrients, which would help produce stronger roots and make plants be able to grow taller. Germination is the development of a plant from a seed after the state of being dormant. Since this is a slow process, researchers believe that hydrogen peroxide has the ability to speed it up and increase the amount of plant growth. Hydrogen peroxide comes in many different concentrations that may have a different effect on how fast the germination process will be. Some studies say that the higher the concentration, the better the outcome will be, while others believe that a higher concentration might do more harm. The extra oxygen molecule gives hydrogen peroxide its ability to kill any bacteria that may be present on the plant. The missing information about different hydrogen peroxide concentrations gave me the opportunity to explore the gap of how it could be used on plants. All of this background information then led me to my research question, which was, do different percentages of hydrogen peroxide affect tomato seed germination? But before I conducted my experiment, I had to develop my hypotheses. My research hypothesis was, if tomato seeds are soaked in different solutions, then the seeds will germinate faster in a hydrogen peroxide concentration. My null hypothesis was, if tomato seeds are soaked in different solutions, then there will be no significant difference in the germination rate of the seeds among the different solutions. My variables that I included were the following. My independent variable was the hydrogen peroxide that was applied to the seeds during their germination process, which made my dependent variable the rate of germination of the tomato seeds. In order to signify the difference hydrogen peroxide had on plants, I had to have a control group, which were the seeds that received only water. The constants that I left the same among the plants were the amount of sunlight, water, soil type, and container size. I then began to construct the methodology process of my experiment. First, I had to gather all the materials needed, such as the tomato seeds and the different concentrations of hydrogen peroxide that I used, which were 3%, 6%, and 8%. I was able to buy topsoil in a planting tray at a local tractor supply. I also gathered the other materials from around my house, such as paper plates, paper towels, filtered water, and cups. I then used a random number generator to assign each seed a number and what group they belonged to, in order to see which concentration of hydrogen peroxide they would receive. Out of the 32 groups, seeds labeled 1 through 8 received 3%, 9 through 16 received 6%, 17 through 24 received 8%, and 25 through 32 received no hydrogen peroxide. I had to create water and hydrogen peroxide solutions by applying 2 teaspoons of hydrogen peroxide to 2 cups of water. Then I wrapped each seeds in a paper towel and dampened it with the hydrogen peroxide solution. The seeds had to soak for 24 hours. After 24 hours, I rinsed them off and planted them in a self-watering tray with topsoil. I watered the seeds every day for 1 month and recorded my data. I then compiled my raw data where I was able to conduct my statistical analysis. For my statistical analysis, I conducted a one-way ANOVA. I chose this test because I could easily compare the differences amongst the 4 independent groups that I had. I was able to reject my null hypothesis because at the significance level of 0.05, my p-value of my data was 0.014. In the graph shown here, I have the mean height of each group. By using the means, it was possible to compare the differences amongst the different concentrations of hydrogen peroxide. The 3% hydrogen peroxide had the most effect on plant germination since it had the highest mean. The group that did not receive any hydrogen peroxide at all had the least amount of growth with the lowest mean, indicating that hydrogen peroxide does have a significant effect on plant growth. However, in the 8% hydrogen peroxide group, the 2 outliers were 0 inches of growth and 1.5 inches of growth, which could have been the reason why the mean of this group was so high. It is also important to include that none of the other groups contained any outliers. According to the significance level of 0.05, there is substantial evidence to be able to conclude that the 3% hydrogen peroxide had the most effect on tomato seeds compared to the other concentrations of hydrogen peroxide. My results concluded that the 3% concentration actually had the greatest effect. After doing research, I found a study that stated that the lowest concentration of hydrogen peroxide is the best to use because sometimes a higher concentration might do more harm than good. Farmers can take these findings and use them to their advantage to use 3% hydrogen peroxide on their plants in order to have successful growth. The more crops that farmers have, the more supply they will have to either sell or for their own usage on the farm. A few limitations that could have caused a different result in my study were the following. When I completed this experiment, it was at the end of summer, so the weather could have had an effect on how fast the seeds germinated. Usually seeds germinate sufficiently when the weather is warm. To prevent this from being a problem, I could have planned out my experiment better by planting the seeds in late spring or early summer, and this could have also allowed more time for my seeds to grow and have more reliable data. Another limiting factor could have been the amount of water used to water the plant. Too much water could have drowned the plant, and too little water could have been a reason why the seed did not grow. In order to prevent this, I could have done more research on how much water to use on plants and measure it out each time. Lastly, the amount of sunlight could have also been a limiting factor for the tomato seeds. With the seasons changing, the amount of light in a day decreases, causing the plants to not get enough sunlight each day. And a growing light could have been used on the plants to help them grow taller. The importance of completing my study was to help find a solution for plants to grow at a faster rate. In this experiment, I was able to research and explore the reason why some plants may take longer to grow. And the reason behind this is because of their germination process. Plants need an extra boost in their germination to help the plants grow faster and stronger. This would increase the amount of plants that we have, which would allow for a better environment all around. In future research, scientists can take a different type of plant and see if hydrogen peroxide acts the same way as it did on tomato seeds. After completing this experiment, I learned a lot about plants. We were introduced to plants in elementary school, but this experiment allowed me to dive deeper into how plants depend a lot on the environment and how any little thing can affect them. I also learned about the chemical hydrogen peroxide. I did not know that it came in concentrations other than 3%, and you can actually dilute the concentrations with water to make them not as strong. When doing background research on hydrogen peroxide, I discovered that the 3% hydrogen peroxide in stores is starting to lose its popularity after being too strong on infected sites. Instead, scientists can take this chemical and use it on the plants to help them grow faster. Finally, during my research, I learned that it is not easy to be a researcher. It is more complicated than it seems, and this process has allowed me to develop time management skills and critical thinking that I will be able to carry with me throughout the rest of my life. And last but not least, I would like to give a huge thanks to those who helped me throughout my research process. My teachers here at Gov School all gave insight on how to properly complete this experiment and also how to interpret my results. Ms. Long helped me by providing a lecture on how to develop my research process. Ms. Hardy helped me by providing information on plants to conduct my statistical analysis, and Ms. Dillon helped me by providing information on plants in biology class, and also giving suggestions on how to conduct my experiment. I would also like to thank Dr. Bocop for coming in during class and listening to my presentation while also providing me with feedback. And lastly, I would like to thank my parents for supplying me with my materials as well as physically helping me set up my experiment. Thank you all for listening to my presentation. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Ms. Probst.
So how long did you let the plants grow?
Okay, Ms. Probst asked me how long did I allow the plants to grow. And since I had a limited time to complete this experiment, I only let them grow for a month, which is about how long I had until summer was over.
So when you re-watered them each time, were you watering with the same amount of diluted hydrogen peroxide?
I actually soaked the seeds in the hydrogen peroxide concentrations, but when I watered them, I just used filtered water, yes.
Okay, well, where were the seeds when you were soaking them? Sorry, I'm asking so many questions. The reason is hydrogen peroxide breaks down in light into water and oxygen. So if they were in light while you were germinating, or were they in the dark? That's what I'm asking.
When I did my research, it actually stated that the seeds needed to soak in a dark and cold place.
So that's what you did?
Yes, ma'am.
Just making sure.
Yes, Ms. Davis.
Did you come across the mechanism of how the hydrogen peroxide helps the seed to germinate in your research?
Ms. Davis asked me how did I come across how the hydrogen peroxide helps the seed?
Yeah, did you come across the mechanism of how it actually helps it to germinate?
Yes, I just know that the extra oxygen in the hydrogen peroxide allows for the seed to grow faster. The germination process takes so long that the oxygen molecule breaks it down even faster in the hydrogen peroxide.
Why'd you choose tomato seeds?
Dr. Brown asked me why I chose tomato seeds, and when I did my initial research, I found a study that used tomato seeds, but they only used 3%, and when I did further research, I found out that tomato seeds were the easiest to plant, and since I'm not really a farmer, I don't really do good with planting, so I just chose to use